Members, council members, and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted in the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during the public comment or may comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. And a footnote on our process for the new members joining us today. I am facilitating today as it happens. Ken and I tag team on that job. And in general, we use the raise hand button on Zoom and try to stack speakers up on any given subject so that only one person is talking at a time for ease of general communication. Carrie, would you be so kind as to do the roll call, please?
Sure. I will start off with Jerry Glazer, and I believe Jerry said that he had an MTC meeting today, which have been notoriously running long, so he did not think he'd be able to make it.
Yes,
Alex,
and he got stuck in traffic as well, so he does not even think he will be late. He thinks he will be absent, and Sunali will be late.
Okay, great, thank you. And we'll continue on. Alex Goodman.
Here.
Woody Hastings.
Here.
Dina Allen.
Here.
Jasenia Garcia.
I am here.
Joshua Somone.
Yes, thank you.
Diana Rich.
Present.
Kenna Lee.
Here.
Lisa Pierce.
I'm here.
Deborah Burns.
Here.
Sarah Gurney.
Here.
And we have a couple of changes, which I'll do in the planning director report, but I'll call their names right now. Everett Fernandez.
Here.
Ambrosia Thompson. Do not see Ambrosia here. And Argus Brent.
Present.
Thank you. So we do have a quorum today.
Great. Thanks very much for that, Carrie. Everybody has had a wee moment to read the inspirational quote, which Kenna has so kindly posted for us. I believe we can remove that from screen sharing, if you please. Okay, thanks very much. All right, hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Are there any notable action items to review from the previous meeting, Kenna?
We just had requested that the working groups weigh in on the project, that the members weigh in on the project pipeline, any comments that you had, and the chairs work on doing a work plan and refining our agenda, which we have in planning stages.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, at this time, are there any comments from the public regarding items not particularly on today's agenda? I do not see any signs of that at this time. So moving on to, are there any statements of conflicts of interest from any community members regarding items on today's agenda? Okay, looks like no. Our next item would be the planning department report. Carrie?
Thank you, Joshua. So I will start off with recent council actions. And I think the one that probably has rejiggered this committee a little bit is the council did approve merging the Zero Waste Committee with the Climate Action Committee. With the understand, and they also appointed Argus Brent as a youth member. So welcome, Argus. And so we do have 2 youth seats. The other is held right now by Jasenia Garcia. I know she is going off to college soon. So we will have, but it's great that we have a little bit of overlap, and we'll have youth representation continuing, even though we'll have a vacancy available in a couple months. And then the second appointee is Ambrosia Thomas of Recology. And Diana and Sunny, I just realized that I know I did not notify them. So Argus, thank you for knowing what was going on. I don't know if anyone has notified Ambrosia, and that might be why she's not here today. Sort of a transition.
I did include her on the link for today's meeting, but that didn't go out until today.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, I will make sure we get those added to, I've got a few updates to the website for the committee membership, as well as my email list to make sure that when I send out materials, those are all included. And then the second part of it is we have Everett Fernandez, who's a planning commissioner, joining us as the new planning commission liaison. Kathy, as you know, was the liaison to the CAC. She actually has a conflict with one of her what is it? The Rambling, the dance group over at Weishman Hall on
Redwood
Wednesdays.
Rainbows.
Thank you.
Redwood
No,
Rainbows.
Yeah, I think it's actually a different group that uses the same facility. I don't remember, but yeah. Anyway, it's so Everett has been with the Zero Waste Committee for quite some time, and so he's joining us as the new Planning Commission liaison to this group. And that he was appointed less than 24 hours ago. So thank you, Everett, for joining us. So that is that merger is fully taken place, like I said, other than the website updates, and we look forward to the increased group. And I do believe I don't know if the committee has a formal process for establishing working groups to establish a zero waste working group, which I think was the other component of it. So okay, so I should just, and I don't know how you want to coordinate any members of that group. But I'll leave that to the chairs. Other city updates, the council did also discuss hybrid meetings versus virtual meetings at their last meeting, and will be continuing with virtual meetings. I believe it's basically through the summer. There is an interest in exploring and getting hybrid meetings up and running. There was a little discussion of having the committees be the guinea pigs for that, and then having council be the guinea pigs for that. And thankfully we're to council, we'd have more time to work through those components before we do that. But there were also a few folks at the city council meeting who talked about the ability to engage better with the remote, and also I did represent the CAC and the planning commission's comments on that regarding the greenhouse gas. I did also talk to potentially still having in-person special meetings or events like the social event that was hosted earlier with this group. So I think that would actually certainly is something that is encouraged by council, and certainly something that this group could look at. The other topic, the budget subcommittee hearings have continued, and there was further discussion. So a couple of things for the climate action related. Obviously, Phoebe's fellowship has a carryover into next year, and that was fully funded as expected. There were a couple of other initiatives. One was a climate action committee, just general initiative, knowing that this is a very active group. And that even though the budget subcommittee doesn't like placeholders, they reduced it from 15,000 to 5,000, but they did leave that in there, which is really helpful. There is $5,000 if there's a quick task. The way it works for this committee is any initiatives that would dedicate city funding would still need to go to council to do those initiatives. But at least there's some budget identified, and if there is a larger project, getting asking for additional funding at that point, since it's already in a line item in the budget, is much easier. And so that is a good thing. And then the other thing, which will be a larger full council discussion, is the grant writer, which this committee had recommended, the funding group had recommended to council. One of the things that I was asked by the budget subcommittee to do was to have the climate action committee identify, if possible, any specific grants that they felt that grant writer would support. And so I know those of you on the funding group, we can maybe meet separately or email offline if you have any questions about that. But that is something where if you know of sustainability grants that you're thinking the city should be looking at, that would be really helpful to know more specifics on that. And I think that's it for my report this time.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Any questions or clarifications on that front? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Our next item is City Council report. Do the council members have anything to add?
Is there anything you'd like to contribute here?
Do you have something you can take? I was just emailing our planning commission. Thanks to Gary's comment, or any Everett, I will be emailing you. Let's see, we do want to mention, we approved the Peace Wall nominees. I can't remember all of them except Joan Baez, kind of a standout in my lifetime. And I think there were 4 others. We also edited by group conditions, standard conditions for development projects. And that will be best read in final form rather than tried to be summarized here. We approved a sponsorship for the Gravesend Apple Fair this year. It'll be a 2-day event. We have support in police services at the intersection of Regal Road and Covert Lane, plus $3,000 to support the shuttle from Holy Ghost Hall parking lot in O'Reilly. The city will get publicity for that sponsorship too. We reintroduced the Planning Commission ordinance. Carrie, you didn't mention that. And at the majority vote, with my dissent, reduced the number from 5 to 7 to 5 only. And we directed staff to explore a ban on certain types of surveillance technology. That's my short report. Diana, you might have more information of use.
Well, a couple of comments really quickly, because I know we have a lot to cover here. But one is that I want to make it clear that what the budget committee is looking for, and I'm hoping I'd like to emphasize the need for those in this committee who might be able to help Carrie with this project to be available to her and to be as specific as you can, because what the budget committee would like in terms of grants is to have a specific list of particular grants, grant sources, grant opportunities that this climate action committee would like to take advantage of. Carrie would then work with the climate action committee to figure out, she has a standard dollar amount that generally a grant application might take to write. So she could then come up with specifics that she could submit to the budget committee instead of just a $60,000, $30,000 amount. I think with the expertise that we have on this climate action committee, that is not going to be a difficult ask. I don't think that's going to be a big lift. I expect many of you know exactly what grants you might be pursuing in the next year that might benefit Sebastopol and could engage in that conversation with Carrie. So please work with her to come up with specifics so that the budget committee and then the city council can support allocation of those funds. That's really the key piece that I wanted to share. I can contribute other details, but I think that Councilmember Gurney, you've covered the key ones that this committee might be interested in. That's all I got.
Yeah, I just always have to remind us, we can't talk budget between me and Diana here at this meeting, but there are 5 council members, so that whatever the budget draft is, it will be reviewed with scrutiny by the 3 other council members, all of whom have previously been on the budget subcommittee. So be hopeful.
But be specific.
And specific, right.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from committee members or the public on items just covered?
I see Kenna.
Kenna, yeah.
My very pale hand is up. So I just had a question about when the city is sponsoring an event like the Harvest Festival, does that provide any opportunity for the CAC, if we wanted to put a table at that event and not have to pay?
The
I don't-
Harvest Festival, the Apple Blossom.
The Apple.
Gravenstein Apple Fair.
that
I
one.
don't know what Farm Trails policy is on tables. Our sponsorship doesn't sweep tables in with us, but you can ask. And you can certainly ask her that question, Carmen Snyder.
Thank you.
That's a good point. We should maybe add that as a requirement of sponsorship. Thanks.
I mean, just, not that we could always staff a table, but it might be nice.
Great. Okay, any other questions or comments on what we've covered so far? Okay, thanks very much. Moving on to our regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda is welcoming the Zero Waste Committee members to the Climate Action Committee. So in today's case, this is, Sunny, Argus, and Everett in his way. I wanted to say, first of all, we've tried to email the new members on the side. Kenna and I, as co-chairs, are available to help orient you all to the general process. We're going to be discussing some things about how the committee process works on the next item on the agenda. So I think that will be instructive, but we do have a couple of other background documents that we can forward you in an email. So in general, we're not going to give you a full background in this meeting here, but we are available on the side to do that. If you ever have any questions about how things are supposed to work here, we're happy to fill you in. And having said that, I just want to give a couple moments of open space for any of the new members to say hello or introduce themselves or put any general questions or comments for the committee as a whole at your discretion.
Yes, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here and see so many of you. I've had the pleasure of working with so many of you on things. So it's a wonderful group to be with, and we have the same interests. So yeah, we're really happy to be part of this larger group. And thanks for taking us under your wing.
Thanks for joining in, Sunny. Everett, did you have something?
Yeah, just thank you for this group. I've heard a lot of good things, and coming from the Zero Waste Committee, I feel like I'm starting from zero. So any information that you can forward would be helpful, and I'll try to keep up.
Sounds good. Can do. Argus, did you want to say anything? Just no pressure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, just thank you so much for kind of taking us in, and I'm really excited to be working with everyone and on larger, kind of like a larger scope of environmental, policy. And I'm really excited to be the youth representative here.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much to all of you for joining in. Just to recap a little bit, so the whole larger Zero Waste Committee is going to continue to function as a working group. It's up to you all how you want to meet and manage that part of it. There are several other working groups that are part of this committee. Again, I'll probably easiest to just send you a list of those on the side. There's on the order of 8 different ones, so I'm not going to explain all that right now, but if you feel like participating in any of the other working groups, you're certainly welcome to do so. One clarifying question from our standpoint, there's one new member not here, Ambrosia. And just clarifying her status, is she a local resident? Is she specifically just an industry representative? How is her role?
She works for Recology, so she's like the hauler representative. And I know her daughter just had a baby and she's taking some time off work, so that may be why she's not here today. But she's, generally very active in our group, and a great representative and liaison between our hauler and our city.
Okay, great, thank you for that. And just a further process point, my understanding is that we effectively, so Everett is essentially replacing Kathy, but then we have 2 new official voting members who are Argus and Ambrosia, and Sunny, you're sort of sitting in, but not a full member of CAC, is that correct? Okay. Yep. Just checking for our purposes.
Just lurking in the corners.
Great. Oh, Absolutely essential linchpin, as I understand it. And to review our working group structure, working groups can consist of anything up to one person less than a quorum of our whole committee for public disclosure purposes in the Brown Act, which is to say up to 6 or potentially 7 of us can meet as working groups, but business for the committee as a whole cannot be discussed with a greater number of committee members than that, except at committee meetings and public reports. So unless anybody has clarifying questions, that sort of completes my summary of this part of the agenda. Anyone with questions or things to add on the subject of the committee murder? I'm not seeing anything, so yeah, thanks again for that and welcome. All right, our next item on the agenda is the project pipeline proposal, which has been put forth by Alex. There were attachments to the meeting agenda for the previous committee meeting. I am going to sort of summarize my understanding of where we're at with respect to this, and then I'll hand the floor to Alex for this item. Alex, at some point, I think it might help to screen share some of the documents. I know you were sort of open to input or suggestions from the committee members, and so it might help for us to all be looking at the same page at a certain point. So essentially, what's happened, we've all been at this for a bit over a year at this point. We've made a lot of progress, but we are to some extent still figuring out how things work. And so we're trying to kind of clarify our process and our formats for the sake of just working a little more smoothly all together. Something that has happened in that year and some is that a little bit more of the action, if you will, has moved to the working groups in terms of generating ideas and proposals and projects. A lot of that is happening in the working groups, and then the working groups bring their proposals to the full committee for some discussion and feedback. And it's a way to just sort of streamline the process in these meetings so that we're not doing a whole lot of brainstorming or hashing things out in these meetings, because inevitably Ken and I find that there's always more that we could talk about than we have time to talk about. So to the extent to which we create a process and a structure for presenting proposals and ideas to this committee so that we can move through them in an efficient way in these meetings is basically what this has been about. And Alex has been so kind as to offer to sort of create documents that we can all refer to help us with navigating this process. So that being said, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Alex for what kind of feedback you might want.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joshua, for queuing that up. I am going to try and share my screen, and I will see if I can get that on here. I'm actually, I don't think I'm actually going to be able to do that because my laptop is going to die and I'm on my phone. So if someone else would like to share, that would be good. If not, I think I can just talk through it generally in some points. I apologize for that. Or Alex, I can at least share.
I might be able to do that. Would you prefer to start with the timeline or the proposal version?
Let's start with the proposal.
Okay. Whoa.
Joshua, can I ask a question while you're doing that?
Yes, certainly.
Alex, I just want to alert you that I did send you an email with an additional document for your consideration that Carrie and I had gone over. No modifications to the two documents that you have put forward and are discussing. I just want you to know that that's in your email inbox when you have a chance.
Yep, I did have a chance to look at it today. Maybe we can get to that on the after we do the first two, and just I might have some clarifying questions just to totally understand that that we could get to a little bit later.
Yeah, and we can always talk about it later too, but thank you for confirming you have it. Thank you.
No problem.
Are people seeing the document from my screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Cool. So just to cue this up. So basically, I mean, just from my perspective, I just was selfishly just trying to find something to help organize projects that we have for our committee, our working groups. And in the past, when I've been in other kinds of project formats like this, these types of documents just help keep everybody organized and on the same page. So that was really, from my perspective, the intention is just to kind of get organize all the information, all the materials, who's in the project, what the goals are of the project, and then obviously, how it relates to our climate, how it relates to the general plan, or how it's affecting our city, some timelines or milestones, and then what kind of resources or budgeting we would need, whether that's city time or actual money for whatever the project is. So those were the general things. I definitely I'm open to feedback. I really just wanted to get something going, and I'm trying to. I'd hopefully like to get the document solidified in the next few weeks, just to kind of get it so people can start using it. And that's basically it. I guess we'll just open it up for comments or thoughts if there's anything we're missing. I know that there's been some emails back and forth from this to this. But if there's anything else that people feel like we want to add or adjust, feel free to jump in. And ideally, I guess I'll just cue this up too. This might be something we use in the beginning of the year as like to queue up a project that we're going to work on for the year, or like an idea comes up and we'll use it for a certain amount of time for the window, and then it will close. And we'll talk about kind of some of the other steps that are part of that in the next document, as when we talk about kind of what the whole project looks like. But this is just the kind of the introduction about how we would organize something that comes to our working group as an idea. Looks like we got 3 hands. Kenna, do you want to go first?
Well, I just think it may be helpful if we look at both if we look at the other one before we discuss too much, because some of the questions may be about the difference between the 2 documents.
If I might interject, just to clarify, Alex, if I'm understanding this document correctly, this would sort of function as a summary description that we can include as an attachment to the agenda for the committee when a working group is bringing forward a proposal to the whole committee. Is that about right in terms of how you're framing it?
Yes, it's a good way to summarize the project for our committee members, so we understand what's being proposed, and it's also could be used as a tool to help organize the rest of the working group, so everybody knows who's on first and what the goals are collectively as you're building the idea.
Great. And I'm going to say I can toggle between the 2 documents at will. Y'all just let me know, but I don't want to try to put them both up simultaneously because I worry about losing control of the screen. Sure. Dina, I think
I'm happy to go to the other. Oh, go ahead.
Dina, did you have a question? I think you're next in line.
Well, why don't we look at the other one and then I'll make my 2 comments.
Okay. Here's the other one.
Sounds good. Okay. Cool. So this was kind of, again, the same motivation for me. I was having a hard time understanding the flow of the process to basically have a project go through our working group, and like at what point we're making sure we're covering all of our bases, we're getting all appropriate checkoffs from city council members, and then at what point we take it to the city council, or we take it to the climate action committee and get approvals and get feedback from other folks. So you can see number 8 is the proposal document. So this the proposal document might be something you're working on for like a month, or something that you put together. And then as you're kind of formulating the idea and talking to maybe other people in the city or other organizations to get the idea, and then, it would be basically formalized and presented at the Climate Action Committee meeting. Let's see if there's any other things I want to comment on. And I think the key for me as part of this process is understanding at what point we can start taking action, and when we're starting to actually like maybe hand it off to a city council member or the planning team, or something where it's like if it gets beyond the scope of our committee, where it really starts to be there, and also get feedback on how we work with them together, because I know some of these ideas, like might be just beyond what we're able to do as support on the committee staff. That's all I have to say.
Dina and Woody queued up.
Okay, so on the second one, the one we're looking at, I see that it's to use the equity matrix. And that was what I was thinking should be included in the first one. So I agree that it should be used. It's already been made for obvious reasons. So it should be a part of planning, I thought. And then the first one had, see if there's anything in the general plan that your proposal can hit. So I was thinking also that in line, kind of along the lines of that, is to have if and how what you're proposing would have multi-benefits, so that if you're doing one thing, it ticks off several things that are our goals for improving climate.
Great. Thanks, Dina. Woody?
Well, Dina raised the same question I had. I mean, yeah, it has complete the equity matrix in this one. And then so I think it just needs to reflect other document, project proposal outline, is to include results of completion of equity matrix. And then just as I was just looking at it, and I think Alex, you said, oh, and then engage with planning department or city to actually, I think there's a step 17 needed on the development, which would be pitch it over to planning or the city council, either in a report or however that communication happens, right? The final step of taking it from this committee to the city council or the planning department.
Yeah, I'll second that, Woody, and I'll say maybe formalizing the process so we do that. Is it going to be Kenna and Joshua that want to take those to present, or is it each individual committee member as they have an idea that's coming through the process to the point where we feel like it needs to go there to make a formal ask or proposal, whether it be budget or changing planning code or whatever it may be. I agree with you. I do think that is the maybe one of the final steps.
If
So
I
we can-
might briefly
Okay.
respond to that on Kenna's and my behalf, I don't think we're trying to be the bottleneck through which all things pass so much as supporting the process for things to move along. So I'd like each working group to feel confident generating proposals in their way, getting feedback and support from the larger committee as needed, but then being able, if there's a point person sort of generating the proposal, that person or group should be able to carry it through to the handoff. And the nature of that handoff is likely to depend on the proposal itself, if you will. Okay, we have Phoebe, Lisa, and Diana.
Yeah, so my comment on both of these is thinking about how the framework fits in. And I know I had a discussion with one of the working groups last night about not wanting the framework and the actions that are in the appendix to restrict what proposals this committee is thinking about. But I think it should be part of the consideration of any action that the committee is considering, whether it aligns with the goals that are in the framework, whether it's moving the city towards those goals. So I don't know where that could maybe go under the generate idea number one, or in the other document, maybe with the general plan, also considering how it relates to the climate action framework there.
Well taken, Phoebe, thank you. Yeah, I think my hope would be that the framework becomes similar to the general plan, and it's something that we should use as a guiding process. Lisa?
Yeah, she took the words right out of my mouth. The framework should be in there. I also think that I don't know quite how and where it should go, but something about evaluating the effectiveness of the actions, really to see, how powerful they're going to be. So that's a much more of an open question. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Diana.
Yeah, I think there's a step in here that might be considered by the committee. We have the step number 8 is formalize the proposal for the informational presentation to the Climate Action Committee. I see that in there, Alex. And then you go back in the working group to do some additional work. Then you have meet with the Climate Action Committee to seek approval or further feedback. My suggestion is that there be a formal document that you submit at that meeting to the Climate Action Committee. Maybe it's an updated version of the project proposal, but that you add in at that stage a recommendation of some kind, because you're now at the point where you should be able to recommend to the Climate Action Committee what direction we might want to take. So that's my only suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. Deborah?
Muted, sorry about that. Can I see the first document again to ask
Sure.
the question? Thank you. Yeah, I guess what I was thinking would be really helpful is when you identify what the project is, and then, what the results you want, the motivation, all that. I think it would be nice for the working group to have in the form the steps that they need to do in order to, reach that goal, and then who's responsible, who's doing it. Because I think part of the initial process of lining out any project is what are the steps we need to get this job done.
Great, point well taken. Alex, didn't want to steal the facilitation from you. It's just the hands have been showing up in my queue. So go for it.
No, that's all good. I prefer you. It just stays with one person. It's a lot easier that way. Yeah, I think all those points are well taken. I think we can do some adjustments and modifications. I think we'll ideally just try to get the best version of the document we can. And then I'd like to get it, hopefully, I guess, Joshua, my question for you is, what would be the process to get these documents finalized? Taking all this feedback today and then sending out the revised version with the feedback taken, and then is that everything we need? Do we need a thumbs up? Like, how do we get this thing finalized and in use?
Very good question, Alex. I will offer my personal take on that, which is not meant to be entirely definitive, but sort of what we're coming to through this process is the idea that a working group or a committee member organizes a proposal, presents it in an informational way to the committee as a whole, gets feedback, goes back and refines that proposal, perhaps has another meeting of feedback in between, depending on the complexity of the issue, and that at some point that becomes a sort of action item that we can approve as a committee as a whole, saying that we have our blessing and we think this is great and it should move forward beyond the committee. So that's sort of 2 or 3 meetings that involve a working group or subset of the committee presenting to the committee as a whole. I wasn't sure if we were going to get to the final point on that today or not. My sense is that we're kind of at the midway point here, that everybody thinks this is going well. Everybody likes how this is coming together. There's just a little bit more feedback. I think my suggestion would be that you go ahead and take the feedback that we've had so far, do another draft on these documents, and then submit them again for a future meeting. And at that point, if everybody's okay accepting these as a working document, we can have an action and a vote and say, yes, we will use these formats moving forward collectively, understanding that, details may be added or amended in time. I would like to encourage that none of our committee documents are necessarily the final be all end all, that they are all sort of evolving working documents. And I think we're almost there, but not necessarily at the point of completely adopting these today, is my take on it, if that sounds
Totally.
reasonable.
No problem. I
Great.
just wanted to get a clarification of that process. I also just wanted to give you and Kenna credit. I don't know if it was you, Joshua, or Kenna, but I think one of you basically completely did the second document. That's the timeline. So I don't want to take credit for that. I want to make sure credit is given where it's due. And thank you so much for your support on that. And I was definitely lost on that whole process. So this has been really helpful. And thank you so much.
No, thank you, Alex, for putting it all together. Much appreciated. All right, I have Deborah, Carrie, and Diana in line. Or let's see, Deborah just disappeared. So Carrie and Diana.
Oh, no, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here. I just forgot on my comment. I want to thank you, Alex, for taking the initiative and doing this. I really appreciate it. So that was all.
Carrie? Yeah. Hands up from Alex and Carrie, but still muted. Anything to add to y'all? There we go.
Sorry, I had an urgent phone call I needed to take. Yeah, so I think this is a really wonderful way of organizing information and presenting to the committee. The one area where I think so you all understand, if there's a budget component of it, that is something that would need to go to city council. I can't approve that as a department head unless there are some unusual circumstances. Like I know I've been able to, if there's things that I can do within my budget because of staff time, or I have some budget savings like I did this year, then I'm certainly happy to work with the committee on that. Certainly, I'll have less flexibility there in the beginning of the year, but as budget goes on, then I'm usually run my budget pretty tight, and so I usually have a little bit of savings. So I usually have by this January or so, kind of know where I'm going with that. But just to understand that would be a secondary part of the process, and I think that's having, Joshua, the fact that you have a budget implication in there or city staff implication in there will be helpful in understanding and communicating that to folks.
Good point. Thank you. Alex.
Last comment here. I'll just say, if we're really looking at this process, maybe as something we do annually to align ourselves with the timing of the budget so that we can submit yearly what projects each working group is going to work on, and make sure we have that submitted in time to the Climate Action Committee and the City Council so that we have enough budget to do that. So I think in the future, maybe as we zoom out, that might be the goal. But I just don't know what the timing would be. So that might be something we want to include as a goal for the group, is by, February 1st of 2023, each group submits their first draft of the proposal so we can be in time for budgeting. Just an idea.
Sure. Actually, Alex, sorry, Joshua.
No, go ahead, please.
Just on that point, I think that's actually one of the ways that I think would be really helpful, as you heard from Diana as a member of the budget subcommittee. Having specifics is really helpful when we go into the budget discussions. And just in terms of the schedule, I usually need to turn in my first draft budget, or my draft budget, middle of February. So I would actually back that up a little bit and say folks are doing that, in December, and then reviewing them in the January meetings, if possible, or at least starting in January, so that there's, I think that's actually a wonderful use for this tool as well, to kind of organize that.
Can I add something really quickly? Because we emailed Joshua and Kenna asking if we could have some time on an agenda coming up, that we thought that it would be really important for us to do a yearly budget and submit it to you, and that we were willing to take that on so that we didn't lose funds in the future. So that is something that we threw out there that we're thinking about as well, just FYI.
Great. And that's, I think that is certainly something that would be helpful.
Carrie, not to put extra stuff on your plate, because I know you've got a lot. but you seem to have a really good handle on what the annual calendar of budget development is, or so we sort of hear about it every now and then and we go, oh, geez, okay, budget, right, and try to wrap our head. Would it be possible to get just sort of a one-page summary of here's the city's annual budget process at some point so that we can align?
Sure, I think the finance director usually puts that out. However, it does not usually include the back end of when, say, department budgets are due, and the sort of the when we get the information from her. Although I'm hoping to get that a little bit earlier this next year, since I think all of us want to be on top of this and have more particulars. So yeah, I can. I'll pull that up and maybe do a couple of, I can send it out to the group with a couple of emails about like when I start my budget, which is before that starts to happen.
Great, thank you. Zaino, I see your hand. We're not quite to public comment. Let me finish up with Alex and we'll get right back to you in just a moment. Alex, anything else to add?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had a moment to go over Diana's document. And if I'm understanding it correctly, her document's purpose was to basically take, like, it wouldn't be a proposal, it'd be like the project's actually in motion and we're taking something to the council. If she could just comment briefly on that so I understood where the third document fit into the puzzle.
Sure, I can address that quickly. Do we want to share the document? How would you like to proceed, Alex? What would be more helpful?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's helpful. I mean, just a quick comment would be good, but maybe for the rest of us, would be good to see it.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop my screen share if you want to bring something up, Diana. I'm hoping
Sure.
we're not going to open up a whole new can of worms, but if we can get
No,
some clarity
I
on this.
I don't think we will. If I can just find it. So this document, which I'll share in just a minute, the concept here is really just to take the idea. So the document that Alex has proposed, there's the outline of steps, and then there's also the document where, here we go, where he has provided a way for a proposal to be submitted to the Climate Action Committee for discussion. My thought was that there might be another step where after discussion, a working group could come back with the proposal in a slightly more formalized way. And this was just kind of the document, that draft that I put together with Carrie's input. There's nothing magical about this, but you can see it's just a little more formal presentation of the proposal. So I think the best bet, happy to take comments and questions, but I think the best bet here would be to leave it in Alex's court to consider whether this would be a document that would be useful in that final come back to the Climate Action Committee. This is the recommendation that we propose. Step might be a different document. Happy to.
Yeah, it just seems like, yeah, you guys just did a really good job of formatting and formalizing the kind of like the proposal document. So now I better understand. I thought there was maybe a little bit of a different step, but it's good to know that I might just be able to merge the two. So it just looks a lot nicer, like your document, and maybe contains the same information. I don't know if that makes sense.
I don't think, honestly, it's important to formalize it or make it look any better, to be perfectly honest. But the difference here is that there is a funding needs line item that's very specific, that addresses kind of the topic that Carrie raised. And there is a recommendation section. That's really the only difference. So that's, I think, important when you get to the point where you want the Climate Action Committee to take some action and make some decisions.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for that, Diana. Okay. So in summary, you all, these are documents or works in progress. Look for an updated revision to be determined in a future meeting. In general, we will be using these guidelines to help organize our work moving forward. And now public comment and questions on the subject. Zaino, please.
Yeah, so I think that the concern of how things are going to be paid for is very important. But there's a source of funding that needs a more nimble approach, that is grants and opportunities. And so I would really regret if the process kind of got streamlined just with the city budget and loses that ability to identify things that come up during the year.
Great, point well taken. All right, do we have any other comments or questions on this agenda item? Okay, thanks everyone. Moving forward, the next item on our agenda is the micromobility options with respect to the bird proposals that we've heard previously. This one's from the Transportation Working Group, and I hope everybody got the attachment of options for how that could be pursued. And I will hand the floor over to Woody and Alex.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and start us off here. I just wanted to basically just state my, a point that came up for us in the last meeting. I think something that we really should take into consideration is the demographic that the technology and this opportunity is targeting, and recognizing it might be a demographic that's between 18 and 35, maybe 45, somewhere in that ballpark. But I want to be really clear that there may be that demographic we're targeting, and that this technology might be something that is an idea or a goal to move the next generation forward in new ways of transportation. So instead of driving their car, to go to their work after they go to college, they're gonna start riding an e-bike, or they're gonna start taking a scooter as a new form of transportation. I think this is, as if we think about this from the future standpoint, this is a way that we can slowly integrate this technology into our culture and into our society. With that being said, I also understand there's an image we have to maintain as our our community is really based on tourism, and that's an important part of making sure that we have safety. We have the image that we want to maintain. We don't want 100 scooters lined up and down our city. So I just want to make sure that that's also heard. And I guess maybe the final point I'll make is that I think that I think the e-bikes could add a value to transportation when you're going from a city, like going between Sebastopol and like Santa Rosa. Like if someone wanted to, go get their phone fixed and they had to go to Verizon, the e-bike could be a really good way to utilize not only just in-town transportation in Sebastopol, but also going between these our cities in the county. So that's what I'll have to say. I'm going to hand it over to Woody. I think he might have some more comments.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I hope what we provided to the committee is helpful. Happy to answer any questions about what we shared. We shared some of the background previous meetings and such. I realized after we put this together, there's 4 options here. There's one additional option that's perhaps a non-starter. And that's the idea of, the city of Sebastopol itself doing the heavy lifting of creating its own sort of public micromobility service. There's no reason why the city itself couldn't do that. It's just would be a lot of work, a daunting prospect, and with unsure results. The upside would be control over every aspect of it. And so that option is not there. And, if this issue is going to be continued on, we could maybe look into that and see if other municipalities have ever done anything like that. And so that was just one thought about an additional option that's, possible, but, really doable on a practical level, not so sure. So another piece that's in the materials we sent is that Santa Rosa and Windsor and Healdsburg as well have all are all going to be carrying out. They've all approved pilot projects to try it out. And my inclination is I lean toward really, I'm not sure there's an urgency on this. So my inclination is to sort of see how those work out, see what the lessons learned are and whatnot. However, that said, I'm willing to consider, if someone wants to move forward on one of these options presented or some other option that you come up with here on the spot, I'd be willing to, consider voting in favor of something like that for Sebastopol to just see how it goes. And I think I'd be wanting to limit my support for anything to a pilot, with a pilot that would need to be reauthorized, going into the future. So that's kind of where I'm at. Just open, happy to answer any questions folks might have. Oh, and I wanted to, Zeno has been very, very engaged and active in our committee. So I wanted to sort of first offer it, if I may, through the chair to Zeno, if he has any comments, or is that not right? We talk first among the committee. Anyway,
as far as I'm
you.
concerned, since no other hands are up at the moment, what do you, if you'd like input from Zeno, that sounds just fine. Zeno, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I hope everybody had a chance to look at the 4 options. So let me just say what I from my point of view, about the road we should take on this. So I feel, especially in the light of comments that have been made in this group, that and knowing the state of Sebastopol, the sidewalks, that the scooter at this moment is not something I would recommend. And it has, if you look at different cities like Santa Cruz or San Diego, actually, there have been some problems of getting these scooters left on the sidewalk, and it became a bit of a mess. So I would suggest that if we go ahead, we restrict it to e-bikes. Now, there are 3 classes of e-bikes. And the class that I would exclude is the one that goes up to like 29, 30 miles. That's way too fast, and it requires special licensing on the part of the rider. So maybe Bird is not even thinking about that. So I would recommend doing the slower e-bikes, the ones that need assist, and the one that can, in principle, move forward without you pedaling at all. So that's what I would recommend. And then the other dimension is, if we go ahead, are we doing a request for proposals broadly so that companies need to apply for this idea? Or do we go with Bird? And there I would say, given the nature of the time dimension and how profitable this will be for companies, I would not expect that people are really standing at the door to apply to do this for us. So the extra cost for a company to create a request for proposals, compete with other companies for really a small contract for the city of Sebastopol seems to me not the road to take. It also would create more effort on the side of the staff of the city to kind of write this proposal, to administrator the different applications. So I would recommend not to take that road, but go for a direct agreement with Bird, just like the other Windsor and Santa Rosa have been doing. But do it only for e-bikes, and do it only for the slower e-bikes and not for the faster e-bike. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your input, Zeno. Kenna, you're muted.
I was just going to share the screen so people can see what these options we're talking about are. Can you guys see that?
Yes, and this would be, if I may, to just say that the proposal that Zeno just pointed to is number 4. It's actually on there, and that would be number 4. Is that correct, Zeno?
Or 3 potentially, or well, actually, yeah, 4. Sorry, 4. Okay. Well, if I might summarize on behalf of your working group, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not hearing anybody, including those who researched the subject, advocating that we hurry on this one. So the easy way out at this point seems to be to consider option 1, which is just essentially wait and see, knowing that other local cities are already doing a pilot. We could always check back in on this in a season or 6 months or a year or something like that. So I guess I'd like to see if there's anybody who wants to advocate for moving more quickly on this. So Kenna, Alex, and Zeno have hands up.
Well, I was very much in favor of option 1 until this morning when a friend of mine was like, you know, I'm really ready to get rid of my car and I'd like to try out e-bikes. Who said, you know, she's like 70% of my trips are 1 or 2 miles in town Sebastopol. So that was a good eye opener for me. And just, I find Alex's thought about future, you know, like getting us in mind of the future is compelling. And I'm really surprising myself for speaking up for trying to move faster, but you know, speed and scale is kind of the underlying theme of all climate action. So I think that option 4 is interesting to bring forward. You know, I'm not sure if we're going to get a lot of information from the pilots being done in Windsor, Santa Rosa, and Healdsburg, because I don't know if they are limited to e-bikes and therefore how relevant they would be to ours. And maybe if someone knows more about those pilots, that would be helpful.
Okay. A lot of hands just went up. I'm not sure about the best order here. I'm gonna say Alex initially.
Yes, thank you, Kenna. I'd like to motion to adopt option 4.
All right, that's a good start. Let me hold that motion to the side for a moment, Alex, until I hear the comments of the people who've raised their hands, and we'll come back to it shortly, if you please. Jasenia.
I just wanted to quickly say that I think the best option for knowing what would work well in Sebastopol would be actually trying it in Sebastopol, just because we will not get a definitive answer any other way. I'm not really sure where I stand, but I do think that it might be good to at least try it out.
Well said. Diana?
I think that we need to wait. We have these programs in Windsor and Santa Rosa, and watching how it goes with that experience is important. We have had some safety concerns expressed. I share those safety concerns. The nature of our sidewalks, it's really bad. I expect that we will likely have some problems, and I think there continue to be unanswered questions. So I would urge us to look at the more conservative, safer approach and hold off and see how their programs go. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Lisa.
So I'm glad that there isn't a lot of support for the scooters. I think option 4 makes sense just because I suspect that those pilot projects, just what Kenna was saying, are also for scooters. And I don't think there's a lot of interest here for that, or at least not enough. The thing that I just wanted to bring up is that when Bird came, it sounded like they would start with scooters and then, if it was successful, move to e-bikes. And so I'm not really sure that they would be interested in going right to e-bikes, but that's a question. So if Bird wouldn't consider that, maybe an RFP would make sense at that point.
I don't know that they've been asked yet, so, but yeah, it's worth seeing. All right, Alex, your hand has been up for a while. I'm not sure. We'll come back to your proposal, certainly. We have Zeno and Woody.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of acting now and getting something happening in town. I think it's a good way to stir things up, to get something moving. I'm not really confident that a pilot in Windsor or Santa Rosa is that helpful for us. I mean, the pilots have been done elsewhere in California. Yeah, and Windsor is a very different community in comparison with Sebastopol. So I'm in favor of moving ahead with option 4 and getting something going in town. And I think the remark of Lisa is well taken, that if they're not interested in doing that, we should go for looking around for somebody else.
Okay, thank you. Woody?
Right. So I just wanted to respond directly to Lisa's question. And no, we haven't reached out to the Bird folks to see if they'd be willing to start, do a pilot with just bikes. We're aware of that. That is just an open question. We'd need to find out if they, and then if they're not, then we'd have to go back to the drawing board and decide how we want to move forward.
Fair. Okay. I wanted to come back around to Alex's proposal in a bit and see if that has weight. I'm assuming, if I may, that if we're talking about e-bikes, that riding them onto sidewalks downtown is off the table and that they would be expected to use bike lanes like other bikes, just to clarify on that public safety issue. Diana, do you have further comment?
I had a procedural question, if I could. Carrie, what are the steps for bringing this proposal forward? Let's say that the Climate Action Committee negotiates with Bird or some other group and wants to bring it forward. Does it go before the city council? Please help us understand.
Thank you. Yes, it would need to come before the city council for a couple of things. One is a committee cannot negotiate a contract or sign an agreement with, that would need to be a council decision. Any of the insurance requirements and discussions that would need to be had in terms of liability and those types of things would probably need to be reviewed. If it's on public sidewalks and walkways and streets, then usually it would go through the public works department or the engineering department, I should say, which is control for that. I would want to make sure the city manager and assistant city manager were aware of the potential to move forward with that. If it is an agreement, then even if it's no cost, the city council would need to authorize that. Diana, it's similar to the Switzer fellow that's working on the Calder Creek project for us. There was no cost to us, but there was still an agreement the city needed to enter for that. And that went before council for council approval for that. If it's using city property in some way, for like where are the bikes racks going to be and where are they going to be parked and all that kind of stuff. Those are definitely things that would need to be worked out, not necessarily in detail, but some idea of where they would be. You could do it as a two-stage process, which one would be, bringing it to council as a regular agenda item for discussion and direction as to whether or not the council wants to move forward with it, and then go and negotiate and do a lot of the detail work that might have to happen in terms of where the bicycles can be parked, where, all the logistical kind of stuff that would be needed for an agreement, and then come back with the final agreement, which could be very easily a consent item for council. I would hate to have the group do a lot of work getting all of the details in order and then have council say, no, we're not interested in this. And so that's the reason for, even though it seems like more work, that this sort of doing it in two parts.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's all predictable to me, but just wanted to make sure the committee is aware of the process. And then the question would be, you'd have to help guide at what point the city manager and assistant city manager need to be included in any discussions. I have to correct my statement earlier. For some reason, I understood that option number 4 was still scooters. And I think it was because I had read the bird really was not open to starting with e-bikes. Anyway, bottom line is I like option 4 to the extent that that continues to be an option that this group wants to pursue. I'm happy to support that also. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Kenna, would you mind stopping the screen sharing? I think we've all figured out the assortment of options. Kenna?
Joshua, I also wanted to point out that I just read Phoebe's draft and e-bikes were a big deal there, so.
Great. There we are again. Okay. Hello, Ruby. All right. Having that discussion, we're coming back around to Alex's proposal, if I may paraphrase for convenience. I believe the proposal would be that we ask Bird to create a proposal for an e-bike pilot for Sebastopol. Presumably, if we support that process, they would be presenting it to the city council, probably advisable to do so in a rough draft format before working out all the nitty-gritty details. Alex, is that a reasonable summary of the sort of motion you would propose?
I believe so. I want to confirm that with Woody, though.
Woody, does that sound about right to you?
I think you got it right, Joshua.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second for that proposal such that we could bring it forth?
I'm happy to second it.
Great, thanks very much. All right, we are in Kenna. Do you have a comment or discussion on the proposal?
I do. I just want to check it. Do we have any local merchants who are currently renting e-bikes who might be adversely affected by this?
I do know of one, the bicycle shop that's at Morris and Sebastopol Avenue, I believe does, because I bought, well, actually, I don't know if they have e-bikes. I know they rent regular bicycles because I bought one of their old bicycles and made it into an e-bike for myself. So, but I don't know, we should check with them because they would be I know that they do some rentals for tourism.
Diana.
I'm happy to reach out to Denver Booker if the committee feels that would be helpful. He's the owner of that shop.
Okay. Zeno?
Well, yeah, in regard to Denver, he does rent out bikes. I think he does not rent out e-bikes right now. And in the way Bird works also, they're looking for a local representative. So maybe this is a business opportunity for him that he takes it on and he expands his own business a bit.
Great, point well taken. Everett, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just had a question. So maybe I might have missed this. Are we to give guidance to the organization to make the bid to, what criteria or suggestions, rather than they just come back and make an offer, kind of guide them to at least get it to a draft form that would kind of fit our recommendations? I'm just wondering how that would proceed.
Good question. I'm not sure that I can answer that, but sort of dovetailing with Carrie's comments earlier and the way that Bird presented their scooter proposal to us previously, my sense is we would punt it to them, say, we don't want scooters, we might want e-bikes. Could you sketch out a proposal to the city council for what that would look like for your company to do that? Presuming the city council said we support this in principle, then working out the nitty-gritty details with the council, with potentially the planning commission, with the public works department would be part of crafting a final proposal for adoption. I believe that's the sort of process we've outlined. All right. Okay, people, we do have a couple more things on the agenda that I'd like to get to. So if we're relatively comfortable with the status of this proposal, I would like to try to hold a vote on this. So if, and I'm going to say for the sake of expediency, if people could use their little raise hand clicker on there to vote in favor, we'll do that momentarily, and I will ask for then those opposed, those abstaining, et cetera, et cetera. So at the moment, if I could see a show of hands from committee members of those in favor of asking Bird to create a proposal with respect to e-bikes for Sebastopol. Okay, are all hands up at the moment? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, an impressive carrying of the proposal. Thank you very much. Let's pause, take those hands down.
And actually, if I saw that correctly, Joshua, that was unanimous? Because I think the folks have, I don't, did anyone not vote for it that is an actual voting member?
I'm just going to go ahead and give the options. Is there anybody who is opposed to this? Diana, can you take your hand down, please? Okay, just a chance. Is there anybody who is opposed? Any show of hands? Great. Anybody who's choosing to abstain at this time?
Oh.
Great. Okay. Sunali, are you choosing to abstain? Okay, thank you. All right, I believe the ayes have it in this case. Thanks for that vote and discussion, everybody. I believe the ball goes back to the transportation working group to approach Bird and ask Bird to come up with a new proposal or the outline of a proposal, which would come not to this committee, but come to the council as council schedule permits. And I believe that concludes this agenda item. Thanks, folks. That was a good one. All right, moving on. Our next item on the agenda is from Whitty. This is a brief informational presentation on the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty.
Right. This is sort of a first introduction, as it was characterized to me, is how to bring it forward, and just sort of sharing with everybody this this thing that exists, a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. And I'll just say it right away off the top. Yes, largely symbolic, I think, although I do think that there may be plans at some point to use it once sort of a critical mass of signatories is reached. So, you know, there was something, many of you may be aware of this, there was something that was occurred decades ago, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, that was national signatories to that to try to put the brakes on the proliferation of nuclear weapons. So, you know, the concept here is similar to get nations and cities, states to agree to a statement that they are working to cease fossil fuel extraction and refining and use, and so navigate our way out of the fossil fuel era. So this is a fossil fuel treaty. And I think the URL has been shared. I'll drop that. This is the page on the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty that goes into the history, who the folks are behind it, led to it, and, you know, not expecting everybody to look through that now, but there it is. And so it's just something that, you know, right now there are not a lot of city level. There's only a handful of cities really in North America that have signed on to it. So we would still, if we decided to sign on to it, we'd still be a pretty early member. This came to my attention sometime, you know, earlier this year, maybe late last year. And finally getting around to bringing it forward. So just something for folks to look at. Maybe we, after people have had a chance to review it, we bring it forward at a subsequent meeting and discuss it and maybe make a decision whether or not to suggest to the city council to sign on to it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Woody. Any questions or comments from folks at this time, knowing that we can take it up again in the future? Okay, not seeing anything. Thank you for that. Moving along. Our next item is an update on the climate action framework draft process from Phoebe.
Thanks, Joshua. So a draft of the framework went out to all the working groups on the 2nd, and I've been getting some really great feedback on that. So thank you all for taking the time to review it and meet with me, the groups that already met with me, and I have a couple meetings scheduled coming up as well. One sort of universal piece of feedback I've gotten is that there needs to be a better delineation of the implementation process. So that's something I'm definitely going to be focusing on for the next draft. And if you have any additional comments, or if you haven't sent me your comments yet, please do so by the 18th. I'm going to be on vacation starting tomorrow and coming back on the 18th and starting to incorporate all of the feedback then. So that's my update.
Great. Thank you, Phoebe. Short and sweet. Any questions from the working groups on that? Has everyone been able to access the documents so far? Wonderful. Okay, thanks again. Our next item on the agenda is working group reports. This is not an expectation so much as a bit of an open time slot. If anybody from the working groups wants to chime in on things you all have been working on. Debbie. You're muted? Okay.
I see. One thing I brought up earlier was at our working group, we really brought up this idea of taking on a yearly budget. So I'd like to just throw that out there again. I know Dina might have something about the newsletter, but she also reached out to the group that did relaunch and asked if we could have a table at their party, their celebration event they're putting on. And Dina, I was talking to her and she said, yes, we can have a table. So that's something we should talk about if we want one and what we would want that to entail.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the working group front? All right, thank you. Moving on. We have another placeholder for a legislative update, which generally comes from Woody. Woody, is there anything urgent at this time?
Before the clock hits 5, I'm going to drop a link into the chat to a letter that at our next meeting, I'd like to have it in the packet so that we can make a decision as to whether or not to sign on to this letter. So I thought I had the link ready to go. I don't, so it's going to take me a minute. So I'll drop that in the chat and hopefully folks can pick that up and grab it and look at it. Okay.
If you would also be so kind as to email that to me and
yeah, I will.
As agenda fodder. Thanks. All right. Next up is chair reports. Kenna.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We do have our council presentation coming up 6/7, I believe, unless that's been moved. Carrie?
I did have one question on that. We can certainly leave it on that calendar. I do know that Phoebe is planning on doing the presentation for the climate action framework on the 21st. So it was a question of if for committee members, I know it's always nice to have both your items in one meeting, if you wanted me to move the info session to the 21st for you. So because I imagine there's a number of committee members that will want to attend that meeting.
I can't make the 7th, so for what it's worth, the 21st is preferable, but up to you, kind of.
Yeah, it's well, I will be no, I can do the 21st. I can do the 21st. Yeah, so we could just move it to the 21st. That would be fine. One thing that I am hoping, and that gives a little more time to discuss the thing that I do want to discuss with the larger group, and that's included in the framework as well, which is the city did give us an initial list of tasks, which is in the draft framework and also on the city website of what our tasks as a committee are. And I feel like it's time to update them. And so one of the asks at that presentation will be to update that list to the things that we are actually doing and think we should be doing. So we'll be bringing that, we're not creating a climate calendar. Maybe we should. Do we want to do that? Does that need to be on our list? Is that what council really wants us to be doing? Is volunteer events? There's just that list is a little bit not aligned with where our main energies are lying. So just to bring that to everyone's attention to start thinking about, and hopefully I'll be able to flesh that out in future chair reports. And the other thing is I did fill out an application for this group to have a table at the community summit, which is on the 14th. And I believe that's probably what you were talking about, Debbie. No?
Two different events.
Two different events. Okay. So we should probably coordinate on whether we want to be at the community summit or not. That is June 14th at 4:30 p.m. at West County High. But I went ahead and filled out the application because it was due, and our group can have a table if we want one. Lisa.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the tables ideas are great for both events. The other one is Saturday, June 18th, and it's the 120th birthday party for Sebastopol.
That's the one I was talking about that Dina already asked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's all I've got.
Okay, I have some bit of news from the RCPA Climate Action Advisory Council, but I think I will put that till next time in the interest of time here. So at this time, we're looking for any input from members regarding items on the next meeting agenda, recalling that we have hopefully something resembling an action decision on the REACH codes or subject coming up, that one, as well as more input on the framework. Are there any other items that have been mentioned or have not been mentioned that we should consider? Dina, please.
Well, if the outreach group comes up with some ideas for tabling at the Sebastopol celebration, June 18th, we could share a next CAC meeting.
Alex.
Yeah, I'd like to get the proposal and timeline on the agenda, just so we can hopefully finalize that at the next meeting if we have time.
That sounds good. Hopefully that'll be a fairly easy one to pass on through. Thank you. All right, any other suggestions for upcoming agendas?
When you have, oh, sorry, I raised my hand.
Yes, please go ahead, Debbie.
When you have time, if we could talk about the outreach committee taking on the budget, if that's something that we'd like to get organized with our needs.
I'm sorry, outreach taking on budget, can you clarify?
Putting together a proposal for a yearly budget that for what we want, and then submitting it to Carrie so that because we can't have a placeholder, we have to have actual line items to get the money that we want in.
Right. Okay. All right, Diana.
If we could at some point talk about Zero Waste Week and whether the Climate Action Committee wants to participate in that, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay, I'm gonna do my quick sense of the summary of action items from today's meeting. Kenna, if you have anything to add, please feel free to chime in. First, there is a request from Carrie that if anybody has information about specific grant opportunities that we should be looking at, please pass that along. Secondly, there was an action item for Carrie to get us some outline of the city's annual budget schedule so that we can figure out how to be more strategic and aligning our calendar with that. Third, given that we approved the motion to get a bike proposal from Bird, that goes back to the transportation working group to ask Bird to prepare such a proposal for council. Fourth, on the sense of reporting back on our seasonal report to the council later in June, if everybody could do a refresh on those lists of priorities for our committee that we were originally given to consider back then, and let's just all have a look at that, see if that needs to be updated or if there's anything we're missing from our original assignment list back then. Kenna, anything to add? Great. All right. Well, thanks very much for being here, everybody. This was pretty smooth and productive as far as I could tell, and we'll see you next time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you.